Hello and welcome to the Open Era podcast. My name is Devang Desai and I'm joined as always by Mr. Simon Bushell. Bush, we usually get derailed talking about other sports before we get to tennis on this podcast, but we have reason to do that today. Both the Edmonton Oilers and Toronto Maple Leafs are going to the second round. See you in the cup, my friend.
Can you say that in your lifetime? Have you seen them?
I saw them in the second round last time 19 years ago when I was 15, I think, around
Good
there.
Lord.
So yeah.
Long time coming.
Long time coming. Go Leafs go, etc. It's not all celebrations though, Bush, because today is our final Open Era with producer Greg, the backbone of Open Era. We're going to miss Greg dearly and we'll do a proper send-off in the final segment. But yeah, Bush, highs and lows as usual.
Yeah, mostly highs here though, I think.
Mostly
going on
highs.
to bigger and better things, so it's just super stoked and super excited and happy. It's great. On one half, very sad to lose him, but on the other half, like, just so excited for him.
Very excited indeed for our friend Greg. For our final show with him, though, we have a good one, and we have one that I think we'll use as a bit of a catch-up for some things. But of course, the 1,000-day-long Madrid Open is well underway. I've seen a lot of discourse around the length of these Masters tournaments now, Bush, and our very own Pog in the Discord has been vocal about how much he loathes it. But I'm seeing a lot of that on Twitter as well and other mediums where people are finding these tournaments and the fact that they're now longer being too much of a slog. I'm curious where you fall on this.
I largely think it depends on how deep you are in tennis knowledge and lore throughout the year, because I think if you're watching back-to-back tournaments or following the tour as it is, it can be a bit of a slog, especially in this clay court season, because we're looking at 6 straight weeks of elite level tennis, and if you're following the ins and outs of all of it, it can get pretty tiring. I don't necessarily believe that it is too much. I think the way that it's structured is a bit weird, just having these additional days mixed in with the tournament at the Masters tournaments. It makes it a bit of a challenge, I think, to follow as a regular fan. But overall, I don't really mind too much, I've got to say.
There's something to be said about like tuning in on the weekend and watching a semifinal or a final and getting used to that maybe. And I think that was what Pog was kind of getting at as well. And I see what he means. I do think that we are spoiled because there's just so much to watch, but there's less to watch in these 1,000 level events because the seeds get buys, and also we have the schedulers having their ability to kind of really pick and choose who they want to feature, but also not pack things in too tight as you would have to for a week-long tournament. That being said, we've already got some pretty ridiculous results from Madrid so far. I know there's some big names missing, which we'll talk about very briefly coming up, but do we start with another teenager on the WTA, Bush, making some massive news? I think she just turned 16 this past Saturday, but as a 15-year-old, she's recorded some pretty monstrous results so far.
16 match wins in a row as well, if you want to look at her performance throughout the calendar year. She's on a bit of a run here, accepted as a wild card here in Madrid, I think because of the IMG connection. I believe she's signed to that agency, so some tournaments do it differently, where some players get in based upon national representation. In Rome, for example, that's kind of common to see that. But here, I think there's just a strong IMG connection, which is why she makes it. Also, she's really damn good. I think that's probably the starting point. There's no reason to believe she's not going to be an exceptional player. 16 match wins in a row is a pretty good starting point. Also, some of the players that she's beaten this week has been really, really damn impressive. And I guess the question I would have to the audience, and let's put it to you, when you watch her play, she just looks like Emma Raducanu to me. She looks like the same player. And I think it's kind of interesting because they have interesting trajectories of how Raducanu won that US Open.
Right.
I just see a very similar player in terms of makeup, just an exceptionally strong backhand and questionable forehand, but still incredible power on both wings.
Her name, and we haven't mentioned it yet because we've been waiting to break the reveal, but it's Russian teenager Mirra Andreeva. I wonder if it's part of the factory, quote unquote, that is churning out these tennis players now, and the way they're coached and taught, and the fact that all of them have forehands that could be broken down, it seems in the same way? Is this part of the new curriculum, so to speak, for young players coming up? I know there's not too many avenues you can go through that aren't maybe IMG Academy, right, Bush? Like if you are a player who's looking to make the break to the next level, the IMG Academy and their like are the places you want to sign up for. But I wonder if that also allows for maybe not cookie cutter stuff, but people are taught in the same ways, and it kind of shows up when they get to the highest levels. Like you mentioned, the player she's beat, Magda Linette, made the Aussie Open semifinal not too long ago, right? Like I think it's one thing to beat Haddad-Maia, but to follow it up as well and still be in that, wow, look, like I'm just happy to be here phase. I think she'll play Sabalenka next. By the time you listen to that flagless match will have happened probably, but a whole lot of no flags in this draw as well as we get closer to the round of 16, which I just find fascinating as well. But it seems like she's someone who is not built in a lab, but she's built in a tennis factory, Bush, and that's clear by how good she is this young, I feel like.
Well, reading around some of her backstory as well, there was talk in some articles that I was reading. She was capable of hitting the tour at 14 as well. Like that, she was good enough to be winning some of these matches at 14. So to do it, to have to spend an extra year in that factory before she comes out, just because of the eligibility and everything that happens with those rules in place. And she still has that to contend with. Coco Gauff had the same thing, which is she's limited in the number of tournaments that she's able to play before she turns 18. Will be interesting to watch this story. I think, first of all, did you watch the match against Leylah Fernandez in front of literally tens of people?
Yeah, 10 to 12 people.
10 to 12 people. I thought it was astonishing watching the highlights back of it, being like, where the fuck is everyone?
Like, what are you doing? Yeah, what's going on here? Why is this tournament so long if you can't fill any of the seats?
I really wanted to find a match right about it, like an official source, to find out what the crowd number was, to see if they do that, because it has to... The maximum number of people that were in that court must have been 35. It was so small. It was astonishing.
Yeah, I mean, beating Leylah as well is not a cautionary tale, because she'll be fine. And Mirra Andreeva this week being injured and giving a very quick press conference that became the talk of the tennis world, at least in the UK, which I guess we can discuss as well, Bush, if you want to be sickened for 10 to 12 minutes talking about that. But how quickly they can rise, they can fall just as fast, and not fall to career destroying levels, but fall to maybe their ranking should be, or where they really are when it comes to the grand scheme of things, and whether or not you can prolong this and make this a regular thing to be a 17-year-old and 18-year-old making reliable runs. Like, that's a bit insane. It's why I find the Coco Gauff discourse really interesting, because she basically defied a lot of these things that I think we were worried about for a young player. Maybe not winning all the time, but certainly becoming a staple inside the top 20. And you're seeing now players not just surround her, but well below her is targeting certain aspects of her game to great success. So even for someone like her, who's been remarkably consistent, it's super hard. And this is a fantastic story. And I feel like we'll be seeing Andreeva for many years to come, but it's definitely not a given.
Yeah, and I think just talking about her game, she seems like an all-court player to me. Like, serve is clearly growing in stature, still building into the frame, but she has an exceptional cross-court backhand. And I think if you can hold yourself in rallies in the way that she has done so far in Madrid, you're going to win a lot of matches, because that's the bread and butter on tour. If you're not able to challenge backhand cross, as they say on the coaching scene, then you're gonna struggle.
Hold up, Paul Anacone. Relax.
I just need to say insulting things about my players, don't I, to fit into that category. But she has easy power. She generates incredible power. She has incredible movement for someone so young. Yeah, that factory mentality that you're talking about, I think, is accurate here, because she looks like someone who has been built for this from the very start and does not look overawed by the situation at all, which is kind of remarkable. Just
looking at the women's side of the Madrid Open so far, Bush, few surprises. We saw Eugenie Bouchard back in the mix. Eugenie Bouchard making some just fantastic tweets and promptly deleting them, because Old feuds never die. Bianca Andreescu also back, and I think the reaction to her injury not long ago is one of, oh gosh, will we see her again this year at all? So I think it's excellent to see her playing this quickly, Simon. The match itself, the one she lost against Wang, not super excellent, especially the end. There was an obscene tweener attempt in the final game of that match that it sent the warning alarms ringing in my head. But I thought V said it well on the Discord about Bianca's reaction to her injury initially was so severe because I guess she had been through the ringer, really, dealing with so many issues off the court that she immediately assumed the worst, I guess. But to see her back quickly was great. But to see the match itself, not a lost clay court season or a lost grass season, but this is probably about peaking again for the North American section in the summer.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I don't think it should be considered to be a lost clay court or grass court season, though, because she should be an exceptionally good grass court player. Like, the strengths that she has, she should be able to make deep runs on the 3-week grass court season that we have. Yeah. She should be able to do something there. So I was quite surprised at the nature of it. Looked kind of like she was phoning it in, I guess, that third set. It looked like it was...
You read how you will into that tweener, but that's the message I got as well at that juncture.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of looked like she, first tournament back, I'm just here to get some match practice and be out on court again and hope the body holds up and get out here and go to Rome kind of thing. So if that was the case, then, fair enough. But distinct lack of fight, it had to be said. It looked all a bit easy.
I mentioned Coco Gauff, Paula Badosa, who just found her ranking slip a bit. Very strong, 6-3, 6-love, stomping. There's now full treatise being written on Coco Gauff's forehand bush and the problems with it. I'm seeing Substack posts that are going thousands of words long. This feels like a bit of a serious issue in the sense that I think basically an opponent now is pretty aware of what they have to do. And if they're having a good day attacking Coco's forehand, they have a decent shot at winning.
Yeah, give with one hand and take with the other on this one, right? Something that brought her to the top of the rankings, or near enough to the top of the rankings, and to have such incredible success as a 15, 16, and 17-year-old is the thing that's now causing her the most issues. Like, it is a weapon.
Yeah.
There's no denying it, right? Like, she strikes the biggest forehand on tour. I think that's probably true, right? Nah, Iga's
aside, maybe.
Probably top 5 at least. Well, it's certainly top 5 in terms of ground pace that she generates on that forehand side. She's just bad on the run. Like, she's just bad moving side to side when she has to hit that forehand and move. Like, it's just the windup is too long. She has not found a solution to this during the course of the year, and we've touched on this previously. Is that there's very little off-season, there's very little adjustments that you can do inside of the season. This is not like you're in a team sport where you can just say, like, tactically, we're going to do something different and have another player cover for your weaknesses. You can't do that in an individual sport, and I think she's finding out the hard way that players are just going to hone in on that side continuously, and it's going to suck for a long time until she's able to fix this.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. Maybe we can get to this later, but I read... Daria Kasakina talking about Ukrainian players getting support from the LTA for grass court season, which again sounds great, but it's like 3 days, so it's not that long. But a step forward, I think, and I was just reading Kasakina's remarks on that as she makes another run here. She played Tercerenko, no handshake. I don't think Tercerenko's been shaking anyone's handshake at their Russian this year, but there was a wave there, and I think the wave was also because I think the players also understand that Kasakina is one of the good ones. And I just thought the quotes that were flagged by The Guardian were quite good on this matter and basically voicing her support for the Ukrainian players that are going to be playing in London soon. So it's good to see her making a run. Good tennis player, also a good human being. She signed the declaration as well. That declaration we talked about, Bush, that might be an issue for some players. She's already signed it, so she's ready to go.
Has that been made public yet of what's in that document?
No,
can you see it?
I found it fascinating where that was dropped in the article as well. And it was like, yeah, she signed it. You see me on the list. Apparently, this is what the Guardian write-up had. It says it requires players and support staff from Russia to agree not to publicly support the invasion of Ukraine, to compete as a neutral and to not take funds from the Russian state or organizations close to the government. Which...
It's fucking high school stuff.
Sure.
Sign a pledge to making sure you're not cheating in an exam. Like, it's ridiculous.
BFF pledge, yeah. Friends forever. Won't take money from war criminals. We hope, knock on wood.
Katakina was interviewed by BBC's Russell Fuller during the course of the week. Had some interesting quotes that came out in an article basically saying that she felt incredibly lucky to be part of tennis where many other sports have banned Russian athletes, but tennis hasn't. So she's able to continue to make a living and to continue to be on tour, which I think she is very, very aware of what tennis has gone through over the past year in terms of this issue as well. So it's an interesting read, and I'd encourage everyone to check it out.
We'll get to the men's side, Bush. So far, I think that Tsitsipas Thiem match might be the highlight on the men's side. I don't know if you would agree with that.
I think so, yeah. It's been relatively smooth sailing. There's not been a whole lot of shocks. Perhaps the biggest shock of all is the falling apart of Casper Ruud through this clay court season. Some people are saying my hex has worked, and I'd like to clarify, I never actually placed a hex on Casper Ruud. I just called him out for being rude. RUDE. That's frankly all I did. Be nice to people, pay it forward, etc. And I saw Casper Ruud not doing that, and now to see him struggle, part of me believes there's some correlation here. All of this stems from him being unkind and being a bit of a prick to those court people.
It was.
To the ground staff.
It's it's the voice of someone I've heard get their way before when yelling at someone in a less advantageous position. That tone of voice, I've heard it before, man. So yeah. This is Casper Ruud in the mud, in the absolute mud. Terrible. Arnaldi, have you heard of him yet? Bush, Matteo Arnaldi, 22.
Yeah, Matteo Arnaldi played at the Next Gen Finals last year.
Right. Yes.
He did fairly well as well. He looks like a budget Arnaud Clement.
Wow. That's deep into the bag. That's a fantastic remembering some guy right there. Very well done. Very well done. Budget Arnaud Clement. What? I mean, you're bearing this 22-year-old. He's got the whole world ahead of him, and you're telling him that's it.
Look, in all fairness to myself, how many Italians are there on the tour? It's hard to remember all of them.
600, yeah, no. When you said he was at the Next Gen Final, I'm like, oh, the three they snuck in at the end, the three they got in through the side door that are playing at this tournament.
Would you like to touch upon the 39 straight first serves that Stefanos Tsitsipas managed in that match against Dominic Thiem? Absolutely remarkable. To be able to have that strong of a serving performance to go on the run that he did, absolutely incredible. It's been a while since I can remember someone doing that. I'd love to look at some of the data on this to figure out what the longest streak is.
Serving was incredible. His forehand, to probably get its due, is one of the more quote unquote sick shots in tennis. But I thought it was interesting that, Dominic Thiem, excellent to see this level from him as well. And I think Cromwell Josh was saying in the Discord, overall, this is a very positive step for him. And I think that's very true. He was doing what you see a lot of people do against Steph and the people of his ilk and targeting the backhand. And I think Steph being able to overcome having some pretty weird dips during this match and then basically show that he's a serve bot on clay with a whole lot of other tools. Wouldn't be a surprise again to see him do well in some of the bigger tournaments coming up very soon. And fascinating to see what has he learned over the past few years. What has any of this, is it all building to some grand moment for him in terms of putting it together? Because he's been in so many of these moments now that he's a veteran. I would call him a veteran in the most horrible parts of tennis, which are the most pressure-packed moments.
I stumbled on this week this AI cringe bot that you can have write LinkedIn posts for you. And my immediate thought was going straight to Stefanos Tsitsipas, whether or not he has that on speed dial ready to go for all his various social media platforms. Just touching on Dominic Thiem turns 30 in September. It's kind of surprising, really. I think he made his breakthrough quite late in his career, right? He was 27 when he won that US Open. So to be in this stage of his career to effectively having to remodel his forehand like 4 times, I think, probably since his junior days, based upon various injuries. It's a tough road to come back for someone who has really made that summit, who's reached the summit at least once in the sport. Inside of the world's top 100 again, he's 93rd in the world. I mean, stranger things have happened, Dev, but like, yeah, I don't see it anymore. Like, I certainly don't see the same pop off his strings. Like, I don't see the same movement that I once saw. And how could you, based upon the injuries that he's had? But if you can be a top 50 player again, I think that's a really good achievement for the last 2 years that he's had.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. I don't think we're writing him off, but I have an opening for him. I feel like there's a chance. There's a chance that I was less bullish on a few months ago, but I think there has been some progress here. But yeah, I mean, it's a hell of a long road back. That ranking also means he'll have some horrendous draws as we get closer to RG. Let's maybe shelve Madrid there, Bush, unless there's anything else that you want to touch on from the men that you've seen.
No, other than Alcaraz looks incredible still. He's probably going to win this tournament.
He does. As you record, in fact, he's playing Greek. He might be sending Grigor Dimitrov into retirement as we speak. Say it ain't so, Grigor. But I thought that Ruusuvuori-Alcaraz match was quite fun as well. Just Ruusuvuori finish greatness there. I'm following Lauri Markkanen's breakthrough in the NBA. It's Ruusuvuori time, but Alcaraz is a machine. We're going to talk about some of the tournaments that we did miss, including Charlie winning, Holger winning, and Iga winning, coming up next after the break on Open Era. Welcome back to the Open Era podcast. Iga Swiatek doing extremely well on the clay. That is no surprise, of course. Iga Swiatek, very, very excellent player, but I think those powers, they take on new capabilities on the clay. Simon, she's into the round of 16 in Madrid, but she's following that Stuttgart win where she took down Aryna Sabalenka in not a contentious match, but a feisty affair. Had a walkover over Anjoubour on the men's right now. We wish her a speedy recovery. She's out for the foreseeable future, but Iga, Simon winning again on clay, ho hum. But I think the way Iga's talked about online, at least, and this is maybe a terrible way to begin this conversation, but she is utterly dominant on clay. I saw a tweet that we retweeted from Juan Ignacio. 92% of her wins in clay tournaments above the 250 level. She's running up Rafa-like records at some of these tournaments. She's 8-0 in Stuttgart all time. Where are you at on the Iga invincibility scale on clay? Because we were coming off as a section of the tour, or the section of the calendar in which she looked wholly beatable on the hard courts, but that aura is repowering, and we're now in a situation where we're playing that versus the field game again.
Yeah, I don't think she's going to lose. I don't think she's going to lose a single match on clay up until Roland Garros. If you want me to be any more bold than that, like I don't see anyone beating her. The way that she handled business against Sabalenka in that final, despite all of the testiness, should we call it testiness?
I like how we're dancing around the fact that it just seemed like, yeah, there was no friendship on this day. No,
not at all. And despite Sabalenka's best attempt at smashing the car window. By the way, a lot of car tournaments over the last few weeks.
We're back in that car section of the calendar that we know and love, where a player could impale their arm through the glass of a Chevrolet if they're not careful.
Like, I don't want to be all woke about this, but can we get a fucking bike company to sponsor one of these tournaments? Can we get like the Rad Power Stuttgart Open or something like this?
You've noticed tennis or big tennis Thiem trying to push bikes out of the window to tennis life. You know, there's never someone biking to a court shown on TV. It's always a golf cart driving them. Fascinating.
Yeah, if you do dig too deep into tennis law, you have lots of big oil funding car companies and then lots of blood diamonds funding watch companies. So it's not great in terms of some of. And the banking sector as well, before we even get into that. Jesus okay, Christ. Yeah. Not great, certainly, as a sport. So Swiatek is Yeah, I don't really have any additional things to say other than like she's looked imperious to me. I thought that one moment that she looked slightly vulnerable was against Pliskova in that first set, and then honestly just annihilated her to win 1 and 2 and just not look anywhere close to being beaten for the final 60 minutes of that match was astonishing to see. Her level is so high on this surface. I just don't think anyone can live with her.
I welcome it. I think it's fun having these champions where every match they play, it's either a chance to watch a spectacle where you see superb shot making, or you see their opponent level up and try and take them down. I'm a fan of that kind of stuff, and I also like to see it kind of build into a storyline heading into Paris. On the flip side of that, Simon, I mentioned Emma Raducanu in the first segment briefly, but I wanted to touch on that press conference and the not the monocle crashings, but I guess people being concerned about Emma Raducanu and basically the Cole's notes of the stories that she did press before her first round match at the Madrid Open. She didn't speak very long, very short answers. It wasn't clear how many reporters were there or how many reporters were asking the questions, but it just appears like Emma wasn't into it and they shut down the press conference. She withdrew from the tournament soon after. I think the discourse picked up very quickly after that about where Emma Raducanu is at. But I mean, to me, this just does seem like someone going through the motions of being or finding out how life is like as a professional tennis player and struggling to deal with that at times, and just being in a very normal circumstance where it's very hard to deal with these massive changes and the massive changes in quality in terms of who she's playing on a week in and week out basis. But I guess that cannot be the simple answer, right? That cannot be this is what's going on wrong with Emma. Yeah.
Quote Greg Rosetsky, which is always a good starting point. Here we go, just digging deep on this one. Took to Twitter, a platform which is not dead, by the way, for the time being. Greg Rosetsky, quote on Twitter, "I'm still digesting the Emma Raducanu press conference, and I have to say I feel sorry for her. She did the hardest thing you can possibly do in tennis and win a major from qualifying, which we've not seen in our lifetime. Yes, there has not been a consistent team around her since her victory, which is unfortunate, but she was not prepared for global superstardom after winning the US Open. She has felt too much expectation ever since and pressure. The freedom and joy have unfortunately disappeared. I hope she can find the love of the game she once had and enjoy her tennis." All right, cool. So
thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, but one of the things that there's this hindsight thing that's going on, I think, with her, which is sort of retroactively building a narrative that because of all the chops and changes in the camp, because of the people around her, because of all this stuff, it's meant that subsequently since the US Open, she's not been able to find stability. There is one quote that's always stuck with me, and it's in that Russell Fuller piece about her dad's influence on her, which really rung in a way that felt really nasty and not great.
Bad. Yeah.
Just really bad.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, I don't want to perjure myself on this podcast, but I think that's a relationship that does not seem like that quote is just icky in so many ways. And I don't know, man, you got to have strong people in your life and strong foundations to work from, especially when trying to do this transition that she has done from the position of basically up and comer to global superstar instantly. This just doesn't sit right with me. That relationship is a bit dodge.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing is that the UK press is going to focus on Emma Raducanu for a lot of obvious reasons, including the fact that she won a slam as a qualifier, which is quite insane and probably unlikely to see. We're unlikely to see ever again. But this syndrome, which is not a syndrome, but this fact of a career dipping after such an immediate high, we've seen quite a bit recently. I think for different reasons, like Bianca having to go through a pretty disastrous injury run, and then also coupling that with maybe losing her love for the game coincides with her falling down the rankings and having to rebuild. Leylah Fernandez makes the final, that same final against Emma. Now she's losing to 15-year-olds, and you're like, what's going on here? Is there something wrong? Probably not. I think there's a lot of excellent players in the world now, and the training is getting better and better. And it's basically such a grind to stay in where you are in your spot and also continuing to excel. Denis Shapovalov, I was watching him lose early in Madrid, thinking to myself, oh, like, wow, he's out of the top 20 now, and he's falling pretty steadily, and he's losing to the same players. What do we say now? He hasn't been to that top. He hasn't been to the pinnacle of the sport. Like, is this different or not? But I do think there's some common patterns, but they are all different. And Emma's got a lot of other stuff going on, it seems, along with the tennis struggle. So wish her luck. But yeah, it seems bad all around. And it also seems like the weight of expectations in tennis is very consistent. They don't fail to ring when you don't want them to. Coco Gauff as well.
You know what I thought watching that press conference? If I had to summarize it in her words, it literally looked like someone sitting there and going, fuck this. I'm done with this shit. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, this is just nonsense. I've done everything I wanted to. You know, I've made a ton of money. She's incredibly, like, she has the world at her feet. Like, she can do anything. Like, she's smart enough and talented enough that she can go into any industry and be very successful in what she wants to do. Let's just try and drag her away from Wall Street if we can do. Keep her away from finance is what I'm trying to say on this one. But across the board, I don't know, dude. Like, that tennis burnout is a real thing. And it would be a shame to lose her, but at the same time, I would completely understand it.
Go live your life. I mean, Naomi Osaka is a recent example of someone choosing to live how they want to live. And F the haters, but also just like keep your monocles in your coat pockets. Journalists, pundits, random people. To the men, Carlos Alcaraz winning in Barcelona, beating Stefanos Tsitsipas. As much as I loved watching Steph against Dominic Thiem and watching Steph in general on clay, where he looks quite formidable, no doubt in anyone's mind what was going to happen in that Barcelona final, Bush. I believe you called it quite early that you could foretell a stomping, quote unquote. But I think that's a testament to where Carlos Alcaraz is at right now in terms of where his tennis ability is at, where he's at mentally. Just wholly impressive from him.
It's because my boy Lorenzo Musetti took him to the wire,
the break,
took him to the edge.
One of the last great artists, Lorenzo Musetti. No factory machine setting for him.
Exactly.
He's an artist, damn it.
Appreciate the art form. None of this nonsense cookie cutter stuff. Since 2005, Deb, there have been 5 winners. Only 5 winners at the Barcelona Open. That is quite an astonishing achievement. I feel like you could guess at least one of these 5 if you wanted to. Well, I gave you one in Carlos Alcaraz.
Okay, so Rafa Nadal is one of them. Okay.
How many's Rafa won? I'm just going to count this.
12, probably. Jeez, this is tough. Since 2005?
He has won 12. 12 times.
2005. Ah, gosh. Is Carlos Moya on that list, or is that not beyond 2005?
Carlos Moya won in 2003.
Damn. So
it's definitely a who's who prior to Nadal taking this title on a ridiculous run. There's some good names.
There's got to be a Davydenko in there. I feel like it's peak Davydenko territory.
Davydenko did not win this tournament.
Damn. Okay. Give me the names so I don't make a fool of myself.
So the winners of this tournament are Carlos Alcaraz, Rafael Nadal, Dominic Thiem, Kai Nishikori, and the one that no one will get, Fernando Verdasco.
Wow.
In 2010.
Murderers Row, fantastic.
Do you know who he beat in that final?
Verdasco?
Robin Soderling.
Wow. The original clay quarter. I mean, the Rafa stuff, he's not in Madrid, obviously, and his uncle is talking Tony. Whenever Tony's speaking now, I have to imagine none of it is true, and it's all lies and semantics, and he's not his coach anymore, so what does it matter? But he's like, he's going to play. He'll be fine. Maybe
ultimate hype man.
Yeah, you'll be fine. Yeah, sure.
So incredible week for Carlos Alcaraz, going back-to-back at Barcelona. Fairly unsurprising, just given the way that he's played this year. Dusan Lajovic, in the Novak Djokovic Invitational, Devang, wiped the floor with everyone. He looked fantastic.
He did. He's keeping it going in Madrid as well. He beat Felix Auger-Aliassime over 3 sets. Absolutely hilarious tiebreak to end that one. But I find stories like this wonderful to see. Dusan Lajovic, 32 years old, excellent player, but I think serving maybe most well-knownly as the number 2 on Serbia's Davis Cup teams, the guy riding shotgun with Novak on an international level. But someone I've seen him play live a couple of times. I saw him live recently in Toronto as well. Wonderful striker of the ball, like a metronome in terms of his consistency. Excellent on clay, excellent movement on clay. It makes sense that he's played on a shitload of clay courts growing up because he looks very at home on this surface against very good players. I mean, we can get into how hurt Novak was, and there's still images of his elbow kind of looking weird when he was extending for a shot, but that could have been an issue in that match in Bosnia. But overall, what a phenomenal week for someone who's grinded and carved out an excellent career for themselves to get a title like this and beating not just Novak, but beating Rublev as well, considering how well Andrei Rublev has been playing.
He's full merit for winning this title. Like the players that he beat along the way and the way that he played. I know it was literally him playing the entirety of Serbia from the looks of things in terms of his run to this win. But he's a really, like you said, he's a terrific ball striker. He is someone that looked rock solid on both wings. And it's testament as well to the fact that he has been to, I think, multiple 4th rounds at Grand Slam level.
Yeah, I was looking at that level he's at. I'm a bit stunned to see his farthest run is the 4th round, and it's at the French Open in 2014 and the Australian Open and 2 years ago. So quite a huge gap there.
Such a beautiful one-handed backhand as well.
Yeah. Shall we get to the problem child, Holger Rune?
So I guess the thing to start with this is to say, should someone be allowed to wear all orange on a clay court?
Awful. We haven't gotten into some of the fashion looks so far. I saw Chapo, whatever he's wearing for Nike now, just sending out solid block colors to their players. It seems like, yeah, here's some colors we got. Figure it out how you want to wear this. It's not particularly inspired, and I wasn't liking Steph's Tetris kit either. But you can't wear colors that are exactly the same as the court. This is day one stuff, guys. Like, really?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. We can't be having this, right? Who approved this? Who approved this before sending it out? That
was bad, but also I was crestfallen watching our man Botic, all caps, Van de Zandenstrup, absolutely bottle that match. Definitely should have won. You know, when we say they should have won that match, or they're really rude and missed opportunities, or in just a few chances the other way. No, this was on Botic's racket, and he let it slip to a kid. I wanted to say man, but to a kid who is developing a bit of a reputation in all the ways that we've talked about, Simon, but dare I say, as a quote-unquote winner, it makes me sick, but I'll say it.
He's a real fighter, if you want to use that terminology.
That's a better cliche to throw out there, quote-unquote fighter, battler.
He never is out of matches. That's certainly true. Say the match point against Bublik as well in Madrid this week. So, I mean, we've touched on it so many times. He's just really, really good for someone his age to continue to do what he has done. Sneaky, I said this at the start of the year, and I should have stuck with it. There's a real chance he could be world number 1 at the end of this year.
He's got that DNA of someone who believes, maybe for better or for worse, believes strongly in himself to a pretty striking degree, and to a degree where you need it. You need it in this sport. You damn need it in this sport where it's one-on-one and you're often playing against, patterns. You're playing against patterns that are trying to break outside of them when the moment strikes. And I think he's beginning to show a mastery of that at such an early age.
Yeah, he's got nothing to defend in the back half of the year, really, other than obviously that Paris Masters, baby. Best tournament of the year. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a real shot that he's at least in the top 5. Like, he could legitimately be world number 1. Like, I fancy him to make a really deep run at the French. And we've all seen what he can do on a hard court as well. He manages to hang around and just make a bunch of semis and some finals, or maybe even win one of these big tournaments, or continue to rack up some wins here. Yeah, I mean, look out. There's a real chance that it happens.
It would be a disappointment if he doesn't match that quarterfinal appearance at RG.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Bush? I think so. I think you could call it a disappointment.
Given the way that he's played and given the surface and everything, he certainly should be thinking higher than that or further than that.
And if he stumbles into one of those goats grazing on the field before they're sent away, Pardon.
I don't want
language yet.
Yeah, I don't want any of that if I'm Rafael Nadal or Novak Djokovic. Oh, none of that if I'm round of 16 or a quarter final. I don't want any of those dudes. None of those young kids. Neither Rune or Alcaraz. Not at all.
We'll leave it there, Bush. Anything else from the week that I know there's a lot.
Yeah, just again highlighting the inequities of the tour or the two tours, that we have 4 tournaments to talk about on the men's side and only 1 on the women's. Some real shit going on here, Dev. It's not great. It's been a rough year for the WTA. I know they've got the funding back together and the whatever the China stuff is turned out to be, but
right.
Not a lot of tennis going on, really.
Not great. The money is equal in Madrid, much to Ion Tiriac's chagrin, probably, which I think is a win for the many campaigners looking for more equality. I'm shocked that Madrid actually went through with that, given the litany of horrendous quotes uttered by their tournament director. But
still alive, has to be said. Still going.
No, it's definitely true, and yeah, I'm sure there'll be much more to talk about that in terms of what the WTA is doing once again in China and towards the back half of their season. But we've got a huge parting shot section to get to this week. So we'll talk to you after the break.
Welcome back to the Open Era podcast. Devang, it is time for parting shots. Everyone's favorite part of the show.
Yes, woo!
Love parting shots.
The last with producer Greg, who I've already I've asked him to scrub several parts of the show already. This is how key he was to this operation.
Strike it from the record. We have perjured ourselves in many parts of this. We're getting banned from various tournaments. I realized that we haven't even done any announcements from the Laver Cup, which takes place in my wonderful home of Vancouver, British Columbia.
Are you going, by the way, sir? Are you going?
Well, I'm not. Where am I finding the money to go to this tournament? It's $1,000 for a single session.
Wow, really? Is it for a package or is that for like a one day?
It's $650 for a single session. So if you want to do a double session,
Canadian,
US.
What? Wow, that is, oh my god. To watch what? Holger Rune against Felix Auger-Aliassime in a real match, TM. Wow.
Can we go? We have to go as press, right? Surely we have to get it as press.
Well, Greg, you know what to do, sir. Strike this from the record as well, and we'll get right on it. All right.
It is parting shots time, Dev. Leading story, if you will. It's finally happened. Kind of. Caveat to it. Human line judges are being replaced. The robots are coming for your job. Everyone elect... What's that guy? Andrew Yang?
Oh, God, yeah. That guy, yeah.
Get the blue hats out.
Oh, my God. The forward party. That's a real winner. Yeah.
The forward party. Okay, cool. Yes. It was announced this week by the ATP, so the WTA did not be part of this announcement. Andrea Gaudenzi, ATP chairman, saying that this is a landmark moment for our sport and not one we've reached without careful consideration. The careful consideration being, how much cheaper is it to remove these officials? I'm joking, of course. I think this has actually been really fascinating to watch because you've had a bit of a mini power battle between the Grand Slams and the ATP in terms of how this is rolled out. Because, of course, the French Open and Wimbledon are still going to go with normal human line judges. They are going to be, from the start of next year, the only tournaments that will be doing so, which is kind of fascinating to watch and see how this all plays out. Because talk about the imbalance in power that exists inside of tennis when you have the entire tour, I said next year, I mean from 2025, who are going to be going to robot line umpires, except probably 2, and those being the French Open and Wimbledon. What did you make of this?
I mean, arguably one of them where you needed the most, or where you're like, maybe we should. It's tough. I know I probably have said on this show several times that I am not against technology, and getting the right call is good, and Hawkeye is good, and all these replay services it's a positive. It is good. But while I'm on that note, I've also raged against Wimbledon being stuck in its ways and archaic and refusing to adapt with the times and develop new techniques. But there is something wonderful about having those people there. Not just because it makes things feel literally less robotic, but it makes things feel important to a level that maybe having no one there does, and maybe making it feel a little more soulless with having no lines people there. It removes some of the mystique and prestige. I can see that argument. I can definitely see it.
I don't know, dude. Like, I think we actually have seen there's some interesting parallels here, of course, because we have seen the advent of AAA baseball using electronic umpires for the first time for like the last few seasons, right? But it's fully coming into, is it in AAA this year for the first time? I can't remember which order it's been in, but it's been a while, right? So they've been testing this and just seeing, I mean, the most conservative sport in the world, baseball. Does that sound reasonable?
Well, up until this year, I might have been with you, but I think even them, they've realized that they have to change things up to capture a certain audience that is not willing to sit through 3.5-hour games every night, right? So
you can't have 4-hour
jeez.
games.
But it's fastest like at Wimbledon, you still have Hawkeye, correct? Even with the lines people there. And the French Open, you don't have anything still, which I think is a bit outrageous considering how BS half these line calls are, because some dude is circling a mark from 20 minutes ago. Like, I think that is a bit outrageous to me, that they are like, well, we're not doing it.
Well, the point that I was coming to as well is that we've seen in the NHL playoffs how much referees are still the central part of a central storyline and a narrative. And I just don't really like it. Like, I think, honestly, everyone just wants to know what the rules are and sticking to it. And I know it's harder in team sports and things that have elements of judging in them. Tennis is much more clear cut. Like, the ball is either in or it's out. You can literally use a machine to tell the answer to that. And I think that is fine. I mean, I wrote a tongue-in-cheek shit post on our Discord basically saying that for semi-finals and finals, you should, if the ball's close to the line, just let them play, right? Like, there's no worries about it. Just let them have at it. Just keep going, right? No need to call it out.
They really need a shit poster position on these tours. Shit poster in chief, just sending out emails to everyone being like, what if we tried this? And seeing if anyone catches on.
That's a segment, Dev. Don't use all the good ideas.
I know, damn it. All right, Ukraine.
Yeah, let's transition to Wimbledon again. Wimbledon is set to donate more than 500,000 British pounds sterling, to the Ukraine relief effort after the quote-unquote difficult decision to lift its ban on Russian and Belarusian players. You mentioned it in segment 1. This involves paying for
lodgings, court time, 2 hotel rooms per player sort of thing. Seems like a decent package. I was joking how short the grass court season is. This is for 3 days, but I don't know if you can read this as them feeling guilty, Bush, but they're trying to make themselves feel better for relenting on this ban that seemed pretty ridiculous in the first place.
I think so, yeah. I mean, it certainly seems that way. This seems like a full-on PR assault to try and... I mean, who are they? I don't know who they are doing this PR for. Is it just the British public? Probably, right? This is the thing of not living in Britain anymore, to know how the British press foaming at the mouth over anything.
And from what I've gathered, yeah, I think that the public sentiment is a bit different maybe than it is. Not to say that I don't think people obviously are supporting Ukraine, I would say, in Canada as well. But I just from what I've read, Simon, it does seem like it's been a very contentious issue across several fronts, across several sport leagues as well. Just seeing how people like Roman Abramovich have been jettisoned from promoting a football team there because of their links. So it's fascinating. I mean, like the declaration, like I mentioned, Kasakina signed it, but I wonder, what are all of them going to sign it? What does it really mean? How can you prove links or ties to people from the government of Russia or people who have ties to the Russian government? I mean, it's pretty ambiguous.
You work in the industry. You work in the biz.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain to me why this article about Wimbledon support for the Ukraine has a tagged on segment at the end about Roger Federer and Serena Williams? Like, what? This is a BBC article about, and it's literally nothing.
You know what? But sickening SEO is the reason for that. It literally has nothing to do with, I mean, they get into some other stuff because there is some other changes to Wimbledon. Men's doubles to be played best of 3 instead of best of 5, which... How do you feel about that, Simon, as they're continuing to crush doubles at all corners?
Just trying to destroy my one true love, the doubles tour. I mean, it's been coming for a while anyway, right? Like these things have felt like having an air of inevitability about them. I think all of this is going to actually get overshot by a very positive change which has been made at Wimbledon, which is to the dark undershorts. Right. And from a very and you called it as well. Actually, I think it's good to recognize that is that I think we both didn't think this was going to go another year without a change to this, especially when it was called out so prominently by a lot of top players last year. And it does show the power that player movements and people in the sport actually have to make a change here.
The water bottle refill as well. Something I've been noticing, I don't know about you, Simon, but I haven't used a plastic water bottle like the ones that aren't reusable in a while. And just thinking about how many I've seen crumpled at the end of a tennis match by someone's chair, I'm like, yeah, we probably don't need to do that. So that seems to be a thing they'll be doing as well. But yeah, this article goes everywhere, which way that you wouldn't expect it to go. Are Roger and Serena going to Wimbledon this year? It doesn't seem like it, Simon, based on this reporting.
Wonderful, groundbreaking reporting. Talk about how green is tennis. Like, maybe they want to start with not having cow guts in their strings or...
I mean, everything is good to start at, but yeah, I mean, this is a small pebble in a really big ocean.
They use tennis balls for like 3 minutes or something before they get thrown. I mean, this is not as bad as baseball, right? Where they literally use... Yeah. How many baseballs do they use in a game? It's like 400 or something ridiculous they go through.
Should we get to Andrei Rublev, Spice King, with the spicy take?
Do you like this quote? I'm not going to do it in Rublev's accent, but I will read the quote out to you. The real tennis is played on clay because it is the surface that requires you to think continuously, to be prepared for long and intense battles, to have an increased physical and mental endurance, and also to be smarter. On hard, weird, you hardly have to think. You hardly have time to think.
Seems about right, doesn't it? As a podcast that loves to dive into the real tennis TM, Simon, we have to swear by this quote, don't we? Even though we've been on the record for hating clay court tennis at times.
I didn't know Rublev loved it this much, though. It's an interesting quote from that perspective.
And it means something from someone from him who has an oddly similar winning percentage across all surfaces. So I think this is someone that we could lend some credibility to this argument because it's not a dirt rat saying this.
What do you think would happen if Rafa Nadal had this quote?
It'd be bad. I think it'd go down quite poorly, you know? Mm-hmm. And it probably still will go down a little poorly. I will say, though, if the clay season was shorter and it was less lopsided with the grass court season, we'd probably have a more mystical view of it, I'd say. Because grass is so short, we cannot romanticize about it for too long, so we cherish every second we see it. Whereas clay, it's impossible to get away from at a certain point.
Yeah. I think I'm coming round to the fact that they should have equal numbers of tournaments played on every surface. That would
bring back the carpet, bring back
indoor wooden
wood.
Floors.
Yeah, yep. Indoor wood. Let's
absolutely. Do that. Blue clay, glass. What else can we do? Sandpaper.
We got to get you mentioned Federer already, so we'll get our obligatory Federer PR plugin because we're waiting for that on tennis shipment. But Roger Federer is an MC at the Met Gala. Did I read this correctly?
I didn't know he was an MC. I knew he was going to the Met Gala. I saw this on his Instagram feed.
I think he is some sort of... Anna Wintour is putting him to work now that he is no longer an active player.
Now, I will admit this on the podcast. I have no idea what the Met Gala is. I don't know what this is. Do you know what it is? Can you enlighten me?
I know it's a gala of some sorts. No, so I believe it is he's the co-chair. Okay. So he's the co-chair.
What does this mean?
what the Met Gala actually is? That's a great question, Simon.
Fashion show of some description, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's fashion's biggest night, quote unquote. And it's in support of the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Costume Institute. So I do know that a lot of celebrities go there wearing some cool stuff. That's about it, though. That's the extent of my knowledge. Remember, of course, that big tennis scene after the US Open in which Raducanu won, where all the tennis players were there and Matteo Berrettini looked like a waiter of some sort. That was tennis's last foray, but Fed will be there. Fed is making sunglasses now. He's gone into full business mode. I have a feeling, Simon, that this might work for him with On because these brands that are targeting the 40 plus crowd I believe Federer is the perfect spokesman. So this is all happening, and we're going to see a lot of commercials with Fed probably soon, more than usual.
According to essentiallysports.com, quote, the biggest fashion event of the year has reportedly gone through a significant transformation, which could cause a lot of concerns for the attendees. The entry prices for the event have undergone an expensive revision. Each guest was required to pay an entry fee of roughly $30,000 last year, but the organizers have decided to increase the fee by $20,000 this year. Therefore, the entry fee is close to $50,000, which will cost some celebrities a sizable portion of their earnings. What the fuck is going on here?
This event is basically known for laundering money and incredibly cool suits and dresses is basically how I look at it.
Speaking of which, the Laver Cup returns to Vancouver this year. Let's move on swiftly. Did you see Jaime Munar and Thansi Kokkinakis getting into it at the net? This was fantastic.
I did. I love the quote, basically what it said. I believe Munar saying to Kokkinakis, "Don't tell me to shut up." And then a reply of, "Or what?" from Kokkinakis, which I think is peak tennis aggro, which I forgive me for using that term, aggro.
I just loved the wonderful passive aggressiveness that was going on throughout this, where it's like, no, there's no issue here. There's no issue.
We're good. We're fine.
Everything's fine. Like, no, there's no issue. No, I'm just asking, right? I'm just asking the question as they are proceeding to just yell insults at each other. Oh, like, it's good. It's good. It's good. Don't worry about it. Anyway, this is great. More of this, please.
Bring it. Some potential labor news as well, Bush, from the ATP.
Yeah, and I don't know how much value to put into this as well. There was a weird article floating around during the course of this week of leaked documentation, which you can always never be certain about, of the ATP potentially introducing a minimum wage, which was floated to be around $500,000 for any players ranked inside of the top 300 in the world, which I think would be a good step in the right direction. I think there was some floating numbers which suggested it takes about $200,000 to be a professional tour player inside of the world's top 300. So having anything above that would be a fantastic step in the right direction. It's expensive to be a tennis player. It's expensive to travel the world, to hire staff and have everyone around. So having a basic level of income that you could then take and add to your tournament prize winnings would be a fantastic step in the right direction. And I think this is actually something which is shared by a decent amount of sports. I think they're pulling on some learnings from other places as well. So if this does happen, I think it's really good.
Saw on that thread, Simon, that you linked to, Haley Baptiste, who's in the 200s in the rankings. She had reported $170,000 in earnings in a recent year, but her expenses were $150,000. So yeah, it's pretty wild when you consider the cost that goes into just being able to travel everywhere and pay the people you need to pay to help you.
I always wondered about the inequities of different tours and different nations as well. Like the US doesn't have any healthcare system, right? So you only earn 20 grand in money and you're spending, 300 days of the year traveling and you get sick or you get injured or anything. How on earth are you supposed to pay for any of this stuff? Pretty crazy. Yeah,
and it makes for not a level playing field at all, right? Not at all. So it's fascinating. I mean, I was reading, thanks to our friends in the Discord, I was reading about, not to get into a doping conversation, but some of cycling's biggest stories, or I guess biggest exposés on the prevalence of doping and how people were doing it and who was able to doing it and the financials needed to pull something like this off and the team it requires and how smart you have to be. And it takes a shitload of cash, which people at the top of these sports have. So food for thought, random doping interlude. The BJK poster for the US Open is out, Bush. Looking okay.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. I think the poster itself is not super great, and I don't necessarily love the bordering, but I like the silhouette of Billie Jean King itself. Outside of that, though, meh.
Yeah, I think that's probably reasonable. It is a celebration of 50 years of equal prize money from 1973 to 2023. Having Billie Jean King framed on the front of this poster, I think, is a very, very good decision to take. Clearly the right subject to to frame on this one. And you can also purchase this poster from the US Open shop.
I was attacking it from a design perspective, not the message, of course, but the design to me, I don't know about you, Simon, but could they not throw in, I don't know, a New York Knick behind, or a random other New York iconography, like the Statue of Liberty's back there, the State Building, what else?
Oh, a New York Knick as opposed to Julius Randle appearing in the back of a poster about equality.
We talked about Castle Ruud, but do you want to dig deeper into this, Simon, or shall we let it be?
What do you think the reason is that he's struggling so badly? His losses this year, just to quote Perfect Tennis, 2023 has lost to players ranked 70, 39, 125, 97, 32, 100, 32, 105. Those are bad losses. There's no two ways around this, Dev. He is having a stinker of a year. And quite frankly, at the moment, does not look like a top 50 tennis player.
He doesn't, no. And I mean, the sample size is large enough where you can say 2023 has been a bit of a disaster for Castle Ruud. I'm not sure what depended on. Like, I don't want to say it's a case of being the hunted now and maybe having expectations on him to actually come through on the regular at some of these bigger events, but he's been able to find a rhythm anywhere, really, whether it be big or small. So 24 years old, clearly still in the prime of his career, and someone who came very close last year to winning some pretty big titles. Would not write him off, but I'm foolish for this because I saw some people maybe foreshadowing this was something that could come for Casper in 2023, but I wasn't expecting this level of drop off for someone who looked like he had consistency or at least a high floor as part of the strongest points of his game.
Yeah, he's been shit. There's no two ways about this. Yeah, he's been really rubbish. Closing parting shots for two final stories. One, the Courtney Wynn piece, friend of the show, on Shea Su Wei for the WTA Tour website. I do encourage you to read through this. It's a bit of a long form read, but it's definitely worth taking a look at. Her return to the tour. She's been away for a while. It's great to have her back. Former number one in doubles, top 30 player in singles, and 37 years of age. Goodness me, she's still going. She of the not changing strings for an entire year fame and random shot selection, but one of those players that it's better to have her on the tour than not, and I'm excited for, if this is the final act of her career, to see what comes out of it.
Phenomenal. Highly recommend that piece. Finally, the 30-year anniversary of the stabbing attack on Monica Seles passed on Sunday, April 30th. I've written a few articles on this, Simon. I believe we've done an episode on this event. Just worth reiterating how seismic this all was. I believe the attacker also passed away quite recently, Simon Gunter Parsh, but just a historic day in tennis, and it truly did reshape the landscape of tennis going forward and Monica Seles' life. And I mean, just horrific scenes, and her ability to bounce back from that was very inspiring, but it also is a complete sliding doors moment for a lot of people, not just Monica Seles.
I mean, who knows how many Grand Slams she could have won?
Yeah.
Genuinely, you could be talking 30. Legitimately, it could be a number as ridiculous as that. So it's, as the day comes and goes in the anniversary, it's still an incredibly sad situation all around. For the sport, obviously for the individual, and for everyone involved. It's just a shitty situation, and I feel like there's been some lessons learnt from that across the board. I think contextually, Dev, like for people maybe who are new to the sport or just coming into it, it's the equivalent of like Conor McDavid being stabbed on the ice.
Yeah.
Like it's something so absurd for people to think about. It's kind of one of those.
This was the best player in the world, and it looked like she was only going to be better. And the best players or her peers were finding it nearly impossible to beat her at the biggest level. So yeah, I think that comp is fair. It's still utterly ridiculous to think about today, 30 years later, but it was a monumental moment in tennis and in the sport as a whole. And it's great to see Monica Seles continuing to be around the game, including around the US Open pretty extensively as well. So that is that for the tennis section, Simon. 2 challenges remaining. Are we keeping it just hockey talk here, or where are you going with your challenge?
No, I was actually going to touch on 2 really quick things. You know, I'm a big snooker fan, of course, and the World Championship finals are going on at the moment. So
saw Ronnie O'Sullivan collapse again in a hilarious fashion.
He did indeed. Not getting the record equaling 8th World Championship that would add to his crown, but the new kid on the block, Luca Bressel from Belgium. And I say new kid on the block because he was the original prodigy in tennis. He was supposed to be Ronnie O'Sullivan. And he
in snooker, right.
In snooker, yeah. And he never quite materialized that way. And to see him finally in the final, I think he's probably going to win this final as well. So that's one that I would circle for everyone over the next few days. If you're watching, if you have a stream going or you're in the UK, enjoy this final.
Wonderful. We will not talk about soccer at all because things have been going poorly across the board.
For both of us. It's fucking terrible, man.
I will say 19 years is a long time, and I know people have been giving Toronto Maple Leaf fans some guff for celebrating as hard as they have been celebrating for beating the Tampa Bay Lightning in the first round. But it's a huge damn deal. And also, shut up. I think it's quite terrible to police how other people cheer unless how they cheer is offensive and terrible. I think let people enjoy stuff. And this is worth celebrating. The cheer police, Simon. Not a big fan. Let people celebrate how they want to celebrate as long as they're not hurting anyone. That's the whole reason we watch this stuff. So I think that's my main point for today.
I would agree with that. And I also think it's interesting that it happens during the course of the week where you see Giannis Antetokounmpo saying a quote, basically trying to check everyone to see defining what failure and success actually looks like in the sport, and just seeing that actually, for once, I think, perhaps in North American culture, sparking a debate about what actually might be considered successful and what might be considered failure as well. So I don't think that actually landed in a particularly good place overall, but
it got into the sports talk cycle pretty quickly. But yeah, and some food for thought for at least 30 seconds there as we tried to digest Giannis's words. No, that's very well put.
He might have a point here, he might not. That's basically what happened.
Let's get to some highlights. All right, we'll leave it there. As we mentioned, producer Greg's last show with us. I just want to say Greg has been with us for a long time and been with us recording as we are from very different parts of Canada. An absolutely phenomenal person to work with, joining us on his weekends all the time and helping us with guests, and also just being a wonderful person to work with. So we're going to miss Greg a lot, but also very proud and pleased for him as he's taken the next step in his career. So many shouts to Greg for being awesome, Simon.
Ditto. Completely echo those words. Super stoked to see the next step of his career, next step of his journey, and we're going to miss him, but all the best to you.
We're on patreon.com/open era. Join us there. Get the show ad free. Get it early on Sundays. Plus, join the Discord where we're talking tennis all the time. As you can probably tell from our show, Discord keeps us up to date on what's going on in the tennis world extremely well. It's also just a great place to chat about tennis and a whole bunch of other stuff with some great people. So join us on Patreon today. We're also on Twitter @OpenEraPod, where we're tweeting about tennis for however long that platform is still open. Finally, a rating or a review. How about both? If you like the show, if you like what we've been doing these years, maybe you've just started listening, ratings and reviews help us so much in terms of helping us grow the show. So if you could be so kind to leave one, we would appreciate it very much. For the final time, thanks to producer Greg on the ones and twos. Thank you to Simon. Open Era will be back soon. Have a great week.